A very sad day yesterday in Minneapolis. 20 children were gunned down, 2 dead so far, in a horrific mass school shooting at a Catholic school. The kids were all in morning mass. That's kind of what they do at Catholic school. And all of a sudden, while the kids were praying, somebody comes out with a shotgun and starts shooting at these innocent children. The shooter was a transgender woman, former male, turned female, and apparently the woman's mother worked at the school as a secretary. And I would imagine this young, when she was a young boy, he probably got horrifically bullied and hurt, and so they developed a hatred towards the Catholic religion, and he developed some plan to get rid of the Catholic faith, kill Catholic people, and that's what happened. They got so screwed up in all this bullshit. And here's something else that happened. I binge listened to Midas Touch, and Ben Meiselas pointed it out. And he even said, why didn't the U.S. government, why didn't the FBI flag this guy's messages? Why didn't they look him over and say, what he's saying is terrorist bullshit? Oh yeah, I know why. And Ben said it right. It was because Trump gutted the FBI. Trump gutted every single service that could have saved these children's lives. But he did not. He felt instead it was like, let's raise funding to try to get rid of all these dark-skinned people. Yeah, let's put our troops in Washington, D.C., and Chicago. J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, he stood up against Trump, and all Trump did was made fun of his weight. Oh, he's a big fat guy. So is Trump. Trump's not a svelte guy himself. And not only that, then you got his family didn't want him. Okay, the Pritzker family owns the Hyatt Hotel chain. Oh yeah, who is? Yeah, like Trump is a very successful businessman himself. Bankrupted a bunch of casinos, and Trump University, and Trump Airlines, and Trump this and Trump that. Newsflash: Trump does not equate to a success. He is bankrupting this country like he did his own companies. And now, this supposed pro-life president, it's like, let's get these kids' thoughts and prayers. Okay, then explain to me why. Explain to me something that was going on when the shooting happened. These kids were praying. I'm not saying, folks, that Catholicism is a bad thing. Okay? I hate to say it, but we as a society need to judge people only if they're good or bad. Okay? Folks, I actually have a cousin who is extremely Catholic, and he won't. And get this, he only talks to one member of my family, one member of his own family, and it's my uncle, because he's a Catholic. He won't talk to me. He won't talk to his own sister. He basically disowns anybody who is not Catholic, because that's the way he and his skank ho wife roll. I try to remind myself, I'm from Elk Rapids, Michigan, and there, the town movie theater, the Elk Rapids Cinema, it's owned by an organization called the Chalfant Foundation. It was owned by a guy named Joe Yucas for almost 50 years, and then he died, and his family tried to run it for a summer, and then they just came to the conclusion, we need to sell it and get all the family, and they sold it to the right people. Chalfant was actually founded by a Catholic priest, and this guy turned out to be an awesome human being. I mean, yes, he was a devout Catholic, but the cool thing about him was he wasn't a guy who was a total douchebag like some people are. He wasn't, I hope he wasn't a child molester. I hope he wasn't, ripping people off. But the story was, he was the chaplain of the Children's Hospital in Detroit for many years, and the story was, he was actually pro-gay, pro-LGBTQ. He was for gay marriage. He was for women's rights. He was for, and get this, during the Vietnam War, he actually got arrested for throwing a brick in Chicago at the DNC there. Yeah, he was anti-war. And, the guy died a couple of years ago. Jim Meyer was his name. And what's so awesome is that, one of the kids that he used to watch over, his name is Aaron Timlin. He now runs the organization. And a couple of years ago, the Chalfant Foundation bought the Elk Rapids Cinema. And they've made a couple of improvements. One improvement they made was they started showing more first-run films, because Joe was, he didn't want to get suckered into a large contract where he had to show a movie for umpteen years or whatever. But during the summer months, he felt, these people feel that people need to go see a movie and have fun, and they did so much. They've only done a lot of good, quite frankly. Anyway, I can go on and on. So the rest of the story is that there's only good and bad in society. There really is. And like I said, the guy who shot up this school was the son of a school, formerly a son, now daughter of this school employee. And I hate to break it to you, but I've noticed that a lot of children of school employees, get bullied a lot. And I was one of them. My dad was a bus driver. There were some kids who called my dad a crackhead, and because, there was always the stigma that bus drivers were horrible, terrible people. And, there was a bus driver in Elk Rapids that everyone loved. His name was Don Hopp. He was also a school playground supervisor too. He was funny, great sense of humor, got along great with everyone. And he wasn't a bad guy. I mean, my dad was a little bit lenient too, you know. I mean, one thing I did notice about some of the kids on my dad's bus was that, here's the thing, you know, when my parents divorced and I had to start riding another bus, I noticed that some of the bus drivers actually segregated the bus, which basically meant that the elementary school kids sat up front and the high schoolers and middle schoolers sat in the back. And because a lot of elementary schoolers were being bullied by the high schoolers. But my dad was a different story. There were a lot of little kids who were seen by the high schoolers, and they got bullied. And I was one of them, unfortunately. And anyway, it kind of reminds me of a discussion I had with a former coworker I had at this. Years ago I worked at years and years ago I worked at a little party store in northern Michigan. Yeah, like I want to talk about where I used to work. So the story was, I worked with this girl. She was like 18 at the time. I was 20. And she told me that one of the reasons why she became a teenage mom was because her father was the school janitor. And everybody bullied her because her dad wasn't necessarily a smart man. Most school janitors are not necessarily high-level employees, obviously. So what happened was she got bullied a lot. She had no friends. And when you got no friends, sometimes you end up hanging out with the wrong kids. And that's how she got pregnant. Ditto with, so what happened was, we discussed this, my stepcousin. My stepcousin's mother was a school secretary herself. And what happened was, she got knocked up by another man, the guy's biological dad, and then she got married to her then husband, my step-uncle, and he adopted him as soon as he was born. He never knew his real father. So what happened was, now the good news was, my step-cousin was one of the smartest kids in school. He was sharp as a tack. I think he was top of the honor roll. But he hung out with the wrong crowd. So I guess what happened was, one day my mom told me that so-and-so wanted me to go out and hang out with him. Just hang out on a Sunday night and, just do shit. Bear in mind, he was only 16 and I was 20, I think. So what happened was, one of the things that he had me do, and bear in mind I was dumb and stupid, was to buy him cigarettes. Because I was of legal age, I could do it. Bear in mind, of course, that you have to be 21 to buy cigarettes now. Actually, it's one of the very few good things that Trump actually did. He actually made it illegal for anyone under the age of 21 to buy cigarettes. He changed it from 18 to 21. So what happened was, I ended up going to another store. I worked at this little party store at the time, and true story, I actually got the job because the guy who did my job previously, he was mentally handicapped, and one day he was outside. I guess he went out to take out the garbage. Group of high school kids came to him and said, "Hey, can you buy me some cigarettes?" He did, and he got caught. Lost his job. I even saw him come in one day with his mom or grandma or whoever, and he was screaming at my boss, "You're filthy rich. I
It's so stupid of you to fire me.
Dude, you bought cigarettes for minors. Ugh. Now, what happened was I ended up buying cigarettes for my stepcousin and his friends. So-called friends, I should say. Bunch of losers who were using him because, he came from because, his grandpa owned this company. And he had some money in his pocket. So what happened was, not only did we do that, they also shoplifted booze from the local grocery store in town. And so we all went to my step-grandpa's at the time, and he has since passed away. And they caused a lot of commotion there. They were throwing shit at some painted plates. One of the plates got knocked down and crashed. And he was assuring me, "Oh, it's not going to happen. Oh, we're going to be fine." And long story short, a few days later, my mom called me and was pissed. He fessed up to drinking. He fessed up to smoking. Me buying cigarettes for him. And it was because his mother found the cigarettes in his bed. And it's like, dude, your parents will know everything. And I look back at that anger that this happened. But then again, this is what happens when you don't have friends at all. You cause trouble. You become a loner, and instead of finding good things to do for yourself, you end up kicking your own ass. And that's what... So anyway, I did apologize to his faux father, I should say. And, it's... the past is behind us on that one. But it taught me a lesson. Because I was in his shoes... And I was in that one girl's shoes, the one who had a kid at 17. And it was all because, when you live in a small town and there's nothing to do, well, there you go. You fuck. And now, thankfully, of course, nobody really cared for me. And it's like, it was like I was such a magnet to white trash back then. Anyway, it's like I didn't want to hang out with these people. I mean, sometimes it's better to have no friends and to hang out with nobody than to hang out with losers. Just saying. And if you want to make friends, it's like it's tough. And if you want to go out and make friends, try to find a place where you can have a common interest. Maybe that might be the best thing I can tell you. Anyway. But, you see, nobody wants to do business with us because of Trump. And, as a matter of fact, he cries about how gas prices are getting lower and lower. Gas prices shot to $3.49 the other day here in Grand Rapids. Some have gone down a little bit, Come and Go is back down to $3.19, but most other places they're still at $3.49. The price of everything keeps going up and up and up. It's all because we are stuck with a president that cares only about Trump and Trump only. And you look at Canada. You look at the fact that their prime minister is promising Ukraine that they'll keep funding the weapons that they need, because we are, they're part of the willing. In America, they keep listening to Vladimir Putin. That's what Trump does. Vladimir is his buddy. Either way you cut it. Now, a few days ago, I mentioned that there was a chance that 89X out of Windsor near Detroit would be going back on the air. And what do you know? Early today, 8:08 a.m., 89X came back on the air. But guess what their slogan is? Windsor's Alternative. Not Detroit and Windsor's Alternative. And there's even an announcer who said, even their voiceover guy even said that we're from Windsor and we're for Windsor. So in other words, fuck Detroit. Fuck America. And even though I'm happy that Detroit is probably one of the most new rock friendly towns in terms of terrestrial radio. I mean, 2 alternative stations and of course the Riff. And and as I've mentioned, there's so many towns and cities that don't have good rock stations anymore because of satellite radio and internet radio and corporate radio just ripping the soul out of its gourd. The situation at hand is simple. I look at what's going on with the A9X. I'm happy it's back. Am I happy that they decided to say that they're Windsor's alternative and not Detroit's alternative? It's like, I understand. They're a Windsor station, and, that's another thing, too. The Canadian government wants Canadian stations to focus on Canada. They don't want... That's why, 40% or so of all the music they play on A9X and other Canadian stations has to be Canadian, from a Canadian artist, or made in Canada, or produced by a Canadian. Yeah, it's the CanCon laws. And of course, I listened for a little bit today, and of course, they played Sum 41. They're a Canadian band, and they also played another band. I forgot their name, but they are a Canadian band, and I would imagine, and basically they're telling Detroit, hey, you got your own alternative station, Alt 98.7. Listen to that. And that's kind of rude. But here's the thing. If there is a plus about Alt 98.7, it's owned by Audacity, who, by the way, is... and one of the major investors is George Soros, who, of course, is, Mr. I fund everything liberal, everything left. So, maybe there's some good in there after all, but Bell Media, from what I heard, is a really shitty company. So, anyway, that's what I have to say about that. At least A9X is back, and it's still worth listening to. I hope they bring back Time Warp on Sunday mornings. Doubt it, though, because I think Christina, the original host, was an American. But anyway, I gotta get going. Have a great day, everyone. Good day and good luck. Weekend is upon us.